Winter Ahead sounds like a warm song about Christmas, love and warmth, and while all of these can be found when we try to relate to the lyrics, the music video seems to hold a much deeper meaning, beyond the love for a partner and definitely beyond Christmas. When the music video starts, we only know about one Taehyung, about the creator, and while the music video progresses, we understand that we will soon be met with more sides of him. However, what we have to remember first is that there are two characters we are mainly following through the music video, the artist who is lost in his art during the process of creating and the real him who later comes to save him. So when and how does all of this happen? Taehyung is first seen sculpting a face, something which we will see later that he briefly identifies himself with. Another small detail I feel like it's important to point out here is that before we see the scenes where the sculpture falls down and breaks into a million pieces, we see that Taehyung can easily mold it with his hand, as he briefly destroys the shape of its face. In the old texts, it was written that people were made out of clay, so we understand from that point that what the story is about creation, because it makes a direct reference to art and the relationship between art and the artist. We see how that sculpture is slowly brought to live, or maybe he falls for his own trap, his own fantasy of his wishes and longing which he channeled into his art and now he is too deep into it. We follow briefly their love story, until everything slowly starts to collapse. We see some brief moments of mess and hallucinations before he enters a room. Before understanding this music video is about something more than just a romantic type of love. When I first saw this scene, with people dancing in white at something which looked like a wedding, I thought that maybe it could refer to a metaphysical bond or promise they create in heaven or somewhere where these forces of love and passion are something stronger than just a mere promise on earth, and they are meant to represent eternal fidelity and love. But back to our storyline. We will make a brief jump in the future of the music video in order to be able to explain this part. We see how in the end, the Taehyung in the red jacket who entered the room is left alone and faced with another Taehyung with blood on his face. He either killed or was killed, but the outcome of the both action is clear, a side of him died. But why? Art can also be perceived as a separate entity which takes over the creator during the process of creation, so Taehyung basically comes to save himself, or that side of himself which was outdone by his art, and the only way to do that is to remove himself from the story he has created. I guess the transition happens when he enters the room because white can also mean death. So maybe a deviance from his consciousness, the death of reality, and then suddenly he becomes confused when he is surrounded by darkness because he is confronted with the reality of his wishes. They aren't how he expected, but he keeps dancing. Dancing because for that short moment before the other Taehyung comes and saves him, before he notices how scary the faces around him are and how there aren't the same faces who welcomed him in white clothes, he doesn't care what it takes as long as he lives his dreams and wishes. The artist trying to transcend his human condition is another theme when we talk about art which depicts the relation between artist and his art, so because we as human beings are limited in actions and consciousness, trying to break that limit would mean death, so maybe there, where he was surrounded by white was also the moment where he lived his art just before the climax, before the other Taehyung came and saved him. We see that when Taehyung realizes what happened, he touches the scar behind his ear, an X which we saw him previously draw on G's sculpture. This could mean two things: either he identified himself with his art and he let it engulf him, his art becoming something more than just an extension of him, it became what controlled him, a new separated entity he couldn't control. Or all this time, we have actually watched the story from the perspective of the Taehyung who saved the other Taehyung, as he followed the course of the actions and exactly when to put an end to the story as not to become out of control. Therefore, he drew the cross behind Taehyung's ear. In the end, he looks both sad and relieved, understanding he saved himself from a dream which would have only hurt him. We see him lifting the veil of the statue once again. Although we don't see the new face, we can only assume that it either changed, or he doesn't feel that calling and connection to it anymore. In this music video, Taehyung embraces the role of the artist who is cursed by his own art, his own desires, and his own life he cannot escape from. He knows what he has to do, but he longs for more, and when he feels closer to reaching it, he breaks down. The only thing his fate can offer him is a hope that despite all the art which was burned to ashes will, in the end, be enough to satisfy him, because even though it didn't have a definite end, the brief moment where it was alive and it took control over him was still a testament and proof of it.